He huffed and puffed under his breath as he stared into God's mouth. Nathan felt like the big bad wolf ready to interrupt the three little innocent pigs as they hurriedly fortified their makeshift homes. He grinned at this thought and then turned his head to look for Margaret. She was a couple of feet down from the hill from the entrance of the cave, holding a walking stick close to her petite breasts. "Hurry up," he called down to her. He turned back to the cave, still grinning. An old rotted sign outside read, "God's Mouth Cave. Keep out." What a tired cliche. Margaret finally made it to the entrance and stood beside him, almost doubled over and out of breath. Nathan looked down and smiled. "Check it out. God's mouth. Wonder where Jesus' anus is." Margaret was less amused. "Give me the damn water bottle," she said, exasperated. The open bottle met her lips, and for a moment he felt peaceful in a way, watching her drink. Or rather, peaceful may not have been the right word. It was more of a feeling that was sort of hard to put his finger on or give a name. But Nathan could settle for content. Content seemed to be one of those words that manifest itself when natural, human words seem to fail. Again, an utter cliche, but it felt good to feel a strange, mixed-up sort of happy for once on this trip. Nathan sighed and turned his flashlight on, pointing it into the cave. God's mouth. He pondered whether the name was appropriate. The pitch black reminded him more of the stereotypical entrance to hell. He turned again to Margaret. "You ready?" She was finally standing straight up, nodding. He clapped a friendly hand to her back and they walked into God's mouth. The inside was not unlike what he saw from the entrance. Dark, dismal, and endlessly black. It seemed to stretch endlessly, no matter how Nathan positioned his flashlight. The last natural light slowly disappeared before the two as they made their way deeper and deeper. Nathan found it strange how soft and compelling the world around him now appeared, despite its stalactites, stalagmites, and other various rocky formations being so jagged. It seemed that even amongst the pointed teeth of God, he could lay down and rest there forever. It was comfortable. Apparently Margaret didn't agree. She shivered uncomfortably under his arm. Nathan raised his eyebrows. "You need your coat?" He tried to look at her and make nonverbal communication as explicit as possible until he realized that they were lost in the inky blackness of the mouth. He bit his lip and waited, but she didn't respond. For a couple minutes they walked in silence. She stopped and stood motionless before Nathan followed suit. "Why the hell are we even here?" She sounded irritated. Nathan shrugged, more to appease himself than her, and shoved his flashlight under his face. Bladed shadows obscured half of his face, the other half illuminated in a wretched mask. "Spooky!" he cried, chuckling. She didn't move. "I thought you wanted to go," he said. Nathan noticed how his voice echoed against the cave walls at any volume. "I mean, you did say you wanted to go see some nature for our vacation, and you did sound impressed when I told you about my visit to Mammoth Cave a couple of years back, so..." His voice trailed off as he began to sense her irritation. "No, you wanted to go here. I wanted to go to a beach or something. But no, a cave. A cave, Nathan!" She sounded more like the big bad wolf now. "I know that you have this weird fetish for spelunking or something, but I don't want to be dragged into it. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to go on a trip and get into nature and fresh air. But this?" He could hear her arms flail and gesture about in the thick air. "This is cave air, not fresh air. This air is practically fermenting. Plus, isn't this illegal? Can we please just leave?" They both stood there. The only sound that could be heard was the electricity in the air being stifled and smothered by the damp atmosphere. Finally, Nathan began to walk. He didn't hear Margaret follow him, but he kept moving forward. "Nathan, stop. Please stop." So he stopped. Nathan could hear her moving closer to him. "I'm tired, and I'm not used to running, climbing, and all these other strenuous activities. I'm just tired." "It's okay," he said as she gripped his arm. "Really, it's fine." He shook his head. "Which way is out?" Nathan could feel Margaret physically pause. Neither of them could remember. Somehow in the confusion of their argument, Nathan had forgotten which way they had been moving. "Idiot," he thought to himself. "Should have brought a goddamn rope or something to trail from the entrance of the cave." He had to take action, so without much thought, he turned 180 degrees and said, "This way." They walked for what seemed to be hours. His feet were tired and sore, and he could hear Margaret's groans from behind him as she held his hand tightly. He felt terrible. This was my fault, he thought. Then he froze. Hey, put your hand out. Feel this rock. Nathan could hear Margaret's bare palm press against a stone. Isn't this, like, abnormally warm? She didn't say anything. He began to work his way along the wall, feeling it as he went, shining the flashlight in front of him. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his head as the ceiling of God's mouth met with his scalp. Gosh, shit! Nathan, are you okay? She seemed on the verge of panic now. I'm fine. Please calm down. We'll get out of here soon, I promise. He started again, pointing his flashlight upwards now to see the ceiling above him. It seemed to be getting narrower. Through clenched teeth, he uttered, Listen, Margaret, babe, I think we gotta turn around. Again, they walked for a decent length. Nathan kept his flashlight pointed upwards this time. Sure enough, the space in the cave seemed to be getting smaller and smaller. If there was any resonating light left in God's mouth aside from the flashlight, he was sure Margaret would have been able to see the whites of his eyes, spreading in panic. They were completely lost. He let go of Margaret's hand and began to feverishly feel his way along the walls. No, Nathan! He heard her shout, but he kept going as his caving instincts kicked into full gear. They had to get out. If they were lost, nobody would be able to find them. Nathan kept feeling along the wall until he abruptly hit a corner. Fuck, he said aloud. Margaret, this seems to be another dead end. Margaret? He spun around on his heel. Shit. He began to repeat his process again, almost running as he felt the wall run past his fingertips. Cold, damp rocks and jagged spears. Suddenly, he found himself at the corner again. Fuck, fuck, fuck! Margaret! He was belting her name out now. In the corner of the cave's maw, where they had been thwarted so many times already, he heard a noise. It sounded like muffled static from a television. Nathan pressed his ear against the rock. It seemed to be getting even warmer now. To his horror, he heard the faint sounds of Margaret screaming on the other side. No. He began running haphazardly into the walls around him. With dawning realization came a wave of sheer horror. There was no entrance. There was no exit. Only those four corners around him. He could feel blood begin to trickle from the cut he managed to get by bashing his head into the ever-shrinking ceiling. They were closing in on him. They were coming in for the kill, and soon they would ground him into a crimson paste. He sat there for hours, waiting for death, his flashlight dim and blinking. Finally, he felt the soft touch of the rocky walls press against his back. Nathan began to cry as he lay down on the ground. His flashlight fell and began to roll in the small hills of the stone. As he quietly stayed prone, tears dripping down his face, Nathan turned and looked at the flashlight. Its last fading beams of light pointed at something not far away from his face. Weakly, he squinted in the dark. His eyes widened, and the tears began to fall even harder from his face. The rocks were piercing his skin now, and blood dripped from all sides. There, in the last light of his flashlight, was the appetizer. The spotlight shone on a hand whose nails were painted red. And he screamed in agony as he watched God's mouth chew its latest meal.